I'm Sam, and I'm a senior graduating this year in public health. I wanted to talk a little bit about homophobia experience at Cal, but to do that I think I need to talk about homophobia experience before coming to Cal. So when I was in high school, I would get harassed a lot. People like hold up signs behind my head, say fag, like call me fag, physically intimidate me. And the hardest part about that was not something the homophobia itself, but that you don't really have anyone to go to about it. The school was not a good support. Oftentimes teachers and staff would themselves be the ones saying really homophobic things. And if you made a complaint, they wouldn't really respond effectively. And also the prospect of complaining about something would be outing yourself and making yourself more of a target. And then also your family and not knowing if your family would accept you creates a problem because you don't really have anyone to go to be like, you know, this, like, being gay, like, is a wonderful thing, like, it's okay. Really in this situation where there's no other gay people, there's no support, your only reaction is to sort of turn that homophobia inwards and to deny that you are gay. So then applied to Cal, and actually a big reason I came to Cal was that I perceived it to be a really gay-friendly place, and I thought it would be like a haven, a place where I could be free from some of the discrimination I faced in high school. And for the most part that's been true, but there still exists homophobia at Berkeley, in the campus and in the surrounding community. When I was a freshman, I started dating this guy, and we would walk around campus and, you know, Telegraph Shattuck area holding hands, and people would make a lot of comments like faggots, that's unnatural, you don't belong here, which is kind of a strange one. And one time a group of people even surrounded us and was like, "Are you gay?" Like, fag, like, and it was really intimidating, and it brought back a lot of the feelings that I had had in high school, just this sort of like initial instinct of wanting to retreat, and when things like that would happen, I would have trouble studying for several days, and it would just bring back a lot of negative experiences I had had in the past. When that started to change was when I started to have a group of friends who were queer themselves, and I had been dating this guy for a while, and having that community, I saw how homophobia also affected them, and so this is no longer something that just affected me, and knowing that it hurt them sort of translated some of that fear and vulnerability into anger and into pride. And so months later, when something happened again, in this case I was walking down Shattuck, and a guy walking towards us was like, "That's not right, that's not natural." I stopped and I looked him in the eyes, and in sort of a sassy voice, I said, "Excuse me?" And he suddenly changed, like his whole complexion changed, and he became very apologetic. And I felt like he saw me as a person and no longer just as sort of like an object of hate. So I think the major change was having a community and having sort of a sense of belonging with other queer people living in Cal. And I also felt like here, unlike where I come from, you could make a difference because there were a lot of resources within the university. Like, I started to become involved in various queer student groups. I joined the Chancellor's Advisory Committee for the LGBT community, and there I felt like I could actually make some changes to prevent homophobia or to make the campus a more welcoming place for queer people. Then my junior year, I encountered another incident. I was living in Oscar Wilde, which is the queer co-op, and it's an LGBT-themed co-op. And one night, the front doors of our house and the windows on the front of the house were spray painted with the words faggot and cunt mug. And other houses in the neighborhood had been tagged as well. There was a former Asian sorority, I think, they had like chink written on their wall, and some of their sororities had just sort of like random swear words written on them. So coming home, or going out that morning and seeing that our front doors had these words sprayed on them, kind of brought back this feeling of not quite belonging. That, even in Berkeley, one of the most, or supposedly most accepting places in the world, that we were viewed as not belonging in the neighborhood because these words had been spray painted in our front doors. It also brought up some of the things that happened to our house in the past. Like, there were fraternities in the past that would throw things at our house, and would use our house as a place of hazing because we were a queer house, supposedly. But the most upsetting part of the incident was the police response, which was that this was not a hate crime. And their reasoning for that was that the house didn't seem like a gay house, according to their words, despite the fact that we have a rainbow flag hanging above our door and the name is Oscar Wilde. They also said that because no individual in the house was targeted, that it was not a hate crime, which to me displays like a real lack of understanding of how hate crimes can affect an entire community and not just individuals. So the officer's final reason that it wasn't a hate crime was that because other houses in the neighborhood had been targeted, that it wasn't a hate crime. So aside from the fact that his reasons contradict the legal definition of a hate crime, the fact that our house, even if this was not premeditated, that we weren't, that the person who had sprayed painted our house didn't think, oh, we're going to go out and tag Wild House, which I don't necessarily think they did do. The fact that we're the target of sort of random crime is not comforting. That we could be the sort of victim of random violence, of random crime, disproportionately because we're different, because we're queer, even in a place where supposedly that doesn't matter, is really discomforting. So I think one factor that we could see at work here with the Wild House spray painting and the police respondents' refusal to label it as a hate crime is actually the city of Berkeley's desire to maintain this image of Berkeley as a diverse and accepting place. In fact, one of our residents in Wild House had interviewed the officer, and he brought up the fact that the city of Berkeley doesn't necessarily want hate crimes to be on its record, because every hate crime gets counted and it gets reported as part of a profile for the city that's displayed on government websites and websites that people can look at when they decide to tour a place or to live in a place. And I see this as well among the student body, and that sometimes this idea of Berkeley as a haven, as a progressive, safe space, can get in the way of responding in a healthy and effective way to incidents when they happen. When I was living in another house within the co-ops, which sort of have this, there's this sort of ideal that people in the co-ops are really progressive. However, this sort of ideal that sort of anything goes, that everyone's accepted, can sometimes mask some problematic comments that people make. And so when I was in one of my houses, sometimes people would say things that I wouldn't necessarily call homophobic, but were heterosexist or were were triggering for me in some way, or made me feel less welcome in the community in some way. And when I voiced some of those concerns, and when I told people that these things that they're saying or doing upset me, their sort of reaction was that, you know, I need to learn to deal with it, that there's sort of this feeling that because, like, we're more progressive than these other people, that, like, you know, it's okay for us to say some things that are not okay. So that's one thing I suggest that we really need to examine is when we talk about a place being a really safe space, that to me a safe space is one where people can bring up issues, they can voice their concerns, a place where maybe hate crime sometimes happens, but that people can respond to those in a way that's productive and in a way that helps the people who are affected. So that's sort of what I'm hoping Berkeley could become.
I'm Emily Opperman, and I'm a student here at Berkeley, and yeah, so my experience with homophobia on campus actually involved a professor, social theory class, and we were talking about like evolutionary biology, and he was using like really like men are masculine and men are going to like look for mates who are more attractive and are more like domineering, and all of these things, and women's role is like meant to be at home with the kids and stuff. And I like raised my hand and I was like, hey, like I don't really relate to this, I'm not really feeling comfortable with this, because I think that there's like cultures that you're kind of leaving out that maybe have like 7 different genders. There's, you know, society, there's different cultures that have different views of like masculinity and femininity. And I just felt like it was very like, you know, binary system focused, like men are like this and women are like that. And then he had us do this assignment where it was like list 2 things that you like and dislike about the opposite sex when it comes to like trying to find a mate. And again, I raised my hand and I was like, hey, like, you know, like I totally outed myself to the entire class, and I was like, you know, like as like a queer person, I don't really relate to this because, you know, I'm not going to date a man, I identify as a lesbian. And he was like, well then you should do the assignment based on who you're attracted to. And again, I raised my hand and I was like, but that, like, because of this assignment, that would place me in the same category as a man, and I don't identify as a man. So I just felt really like stuck. And I was just like, what about intersex people? What about trans people? What if they were trying to do the same assignment? You're not taking them into consideration. And he looked at me and he said, you have to realize that 95% of society is straight, and you just need to get used to it. And at that point, I just stood up and walked out, because I was like, I'm not doing this assignment and I don't appreciate that. And I was like, you're going to get a long email later with some resources. And that was it. And then I walked out of class because I felt completely devalued and disrespected as a human. So.